an y clwgsaredd yn yw suggest, ysgwydwch tîm bio as y siwmar yn y siwmar. Cwyr adefflio'r i'r bwydyniad, torys gyfys cynnig yn y siwmar, sy'n bwgwch i'r show. Good morning and welcome everyone to this meeting of the Sustainable Development Committee taking place at Comhairle in South Uist and also live in the Chamber in Stornoway. And we welcome all those who are listening online. It's wonderful that we're able to gather here today and for our series of meetings, and we look forward to our deliberations over the next few days here. And I'm glad to say, and it's actually wonderful that we actually gathered here today because we're very pleased that we invested in this building and this project development over the years, and we're delighted that it's well used and will be a legacy going forward in the future. So before we proceed any further with our business, I'm going to ask our Deputy Leader, Councillor Duncan McInnes, to lead us in prayer as discussed.
Lord Heavenly Father, we give you thanks this morning for all the opportunity to be gathered here. There's committee series and Uist and Barra. And Lord, we pray that we will see the opportunities and the challenges that the communities here face. And Lord, this morning we give thanks for our gathering here, and in particular the leaders for his first series of meetings in his own home location after his leadership this term. And Lord, we pray for the convener as well, for his first trip as convener to the Uist and to the chair and vice chair this morning, in particular to all the officers that have put together all the papers for our meeting today, which just shows the opportunities that we do have right through the islands. And in particular, we see the opportunities that the creation and the natural resources that you have provided for us in renewable energy can provide to those throughout the islands. And it gives us the opportunity of seeing resurgence in industries in the coming years ahead. And Lord, we pray that collectively that we as a council will influence all the decisions that will be taken in the years to come. And Lord, we see in the community that we're in the influence that the Comhairle has played in the years, from a recollection of initiative at the Edge Shimmered in North, and the way that the communities in South Uist here were looked on there. And we see the opportunities and the infrastructure that the Comhairle has been part of. And Lord, we pray for the Chief Executive and the Deputy Chief Executive as he leads the staff through the coming years and the challenges that they do have. And Lord, we pray for all the staff and the conscientious dedication they have shown through very challenging times with a cyber attack, and how they have ploughed their way to make sure that the business involved continues. And Lord, we pray for all the infrastructure that we have seen coming to fruition, and seen the power of strength and the infrastructure with the opening of the care home in Stornoway and the first cruise ship coming into Stornoway since our last meeting. So we see that the Comhairle has, with limited budgets and reducing budgets, have seen the value of the money that those projects have created. And Lord, we pray for the many today that are in care homes or the sick, and we pray that all the carers that are there will be looking after them, that you'd be with them. And as we come into the exam season, we pray for all the children throughout the Western Isles that you will be with them, and the teachers that are providing them with valuable education that is required. And Lord, we ask all those things in your name for Christ's sake. Amen.
Thank you. Thanks to Duncan. Just a few points in regard to the conduct of the meeting. Members in attendance in person wish to speak during the meeting, please turn on your microphones and wait until the chair invites you to come in. Please note that the mic is live when it is ready. Members attending through MS Teams, please use the raise hand function. And because there's no electronic queuing system today, if you just raise your hands, you wish to speak, and we'll take you in. Excuse me, I hope our colleagues in Stirling were able to hear them. In regards to declarations of interest, members must leave the chamber, leave the room, or end the call remotely. Item 24 will be taken in private at the end of the meeting. Prior to moving into private, participants other than the relevant officer members will be asked to leave the meeting. Finally, a reminder that the meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the owner's website following the meeting. Finally, a reminder that the meeting is being recorded. We move now to the first item on the agenda. That's the minutes of the meeting of the 6th of February 2024, and that is for your approval. Right. Mr. McKenzie, Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, just a question. Item 24, brought to be taken on private. This is a request of some money to allow the project to progress the tender. So, is there any reason why this should be taken in private? Because a number of these figures have been named before.
I think it's really to be commercial sensitivity around this item, so we be taken in private. Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Item 3 is the declaration, sorry, item 5 minutes of the meeting of 20 February 24 has been approval. And item 3 is a declaration of interest. Members are asked to declare any interest that they may have on the agenda. On behalf of members expressed why they retain an interest in the item concerned. Members of the room, please do so now by pressing the microphone or remotely through Teams by using the raised hand function. Any items? Please ensure that the declaration is repeated prior to the relevant item and you adhere to what was previously indicated. Now we move to the presentation. Item 4, Archaeology Service Update. The report by the Deputy Chief Executive. The report is for noting and provides an update on Archaeology Service Owner. And we'd like to welcome Rebecca Reynolds, Archaeology Lecturer, and Emma Gow from Geoscience to the meeting. Colin George Morrison will speak to the report first, and Dr. Reynolds will deliver a presentation on the service. So, Colin George, going to speak to the report first, please.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, Colin George, go ahead.
Yep. Thanks, Chair. So this report, as you said, provides an update on the archaeology service of the Comhairle. The report was done with the archaeologist Kevin Murphy. Kevin unfortunately can't be with us today, but happy to answer any questions members might have. We're just asking members to note the ongoing work within the service and the positive impact of the new HER database. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Colin George. I'll just invite Rebecca to proceed with the presentation, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. My name is Becky Comhairle. I'm an archaeology lecturer with the University of the Highlands and Islands. We're now in North Western Hebrides, rather than Outer Hebrides, for those who needed an update there. And I'm based here at Comhairle. And myself and my team specialise in digital heritage. So that's digital approaches, digital tools and techniques to try and engage people with our island's really rich heritage. So in this short presentation, what I want to tell you about is our flagship project, which is UVAC, the UVA's Virtual Archaeology Project. I want to tell you why we developed it. I want to talk a little bit about the outcomes and the impact of this work. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other projects that we're involved in. Really, the point of me being here is I want to persuade those of you who need persuading, if you haven't been convinced already, that digital heritage tools and techniques are the way forward. Not only are they the future for the way that people are going to present heritage, but they're also a very effective and sustainable approach to the development of heritage across the Outer Hebrides more widely. Doing that wrong. Could you move it forward? Is that right? Oh, perfect, thank you. So I shall give you that. Should work now. Oh yeah, perfect. Okay, so to start then, so the US Virtual Archaeology Project. This was actually born out of a project funded by the Comhairle, which we called Unlocking Potential. It's about trying to bring out the potential of our archaeological resources across the Outer Hebrides. So on the back of that project, we developed and got external funding for a 3.5-year project that started in 2020. And that's been run as a partnership between ourselves, the UHI, North West Hebrides, and with the Comhairle, so with the Archaeology Service specifically. So the starting point was really to start scrutinising what the challenges and opportunities were for presenting archaeological heritage in Uist. So firstly, a really key opportunity is that we have really significant archaeology here of local, national and international significance. So from these kind of well-preserved Neolithic tombs that we've got here to the only site in all of Europe that has mummified human remains. But not only that, we have really well-researched resources, well-researched and really widely published in academic terms. But despite this, historically, the impact locally and regionally has been quite limited. Much of our archaeology has been poorly understood by people who live here and really poorly communicated to our visitors. Furthermore, only a handful of our sites actually have any physical interpretation and very minimal signposting in place. So what we're looking at here is some faded signage at Eilean that was put up in the 90s. And here we have some of the old styles of 1970s historic Scotland as it was at the time, embossed signage at a site called Dún Torquil, which is now quite outdated in terms of its interpretation. Add to that the fact that much of our archaeology is located in really sensitive and protected landscapes that I'm sure we're all aware of, like the Macha, and places where our harsh coastal climate makes physical intervention quite difficult. So places where visitor centres or reconstructions, road access, etc., are problematic, costly, and can be maintenance heavy. So this poses a lot of additional challenges for how we develop heritage infrastructure. The picture here is showing a site that many of you will know, a Balasha, which has been eroding by the sea for a long time. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, a lot of our archaeological heritage isn't very visible. We don't have the impressive upstanding remains that we have in lots of other places, and a lot of our archaeology is buried either by water, by peat, or by sand. And so the starting point of the project was to try and think imaginatively about how we might try and convey our really rich and significant archaeological heritage when there's actually very little to see on the ground. And this photograph was taken by a member of the public who sent this to us. This is someone camping in the internationally significant archaeological site around the corner at Dalibra. And I think just looking at that photo, it's fairly obvious that we could do better at conveying the importance of this site. So this was our starting point. How could we go about enhancing people's view of the archaeology, successfully engaging them in our archaeological resources? But how could we do that with academic rigour? We need to be really true to all of the amazing information that we have. But also we wanted to do it in a way that was sustainable and that brought economic and social benefits to our islands. So what did we do? Well, our response was to look to digital reconstructions and to work collaboratively with the council. This is something that's been really important to us and really effective, as well as working with other researchers and with local communities to create really innovative interpretive content. We had a lot of back and forth on this, and eventually the name Uist Unearthed was born. And this is two things. It's a mobile phone app called Uist Unearthed, and it's also a multimedia exhibition. The AR app has reconstructions of 5 archaeological sites all dotted along the Hebridean Way. And then supporting that, we had a multimedia exhibition that we took to lots of places, including the National Museum in Edinburgh, the British Museum in London, Holyrood, the museum in Stornoway, Kildare Museum, so local, regional and also national venues. We also have some of that exhibition over in the corner there, 3 of our podiums, which I'd invite you to go and have a look at in your break time. So these are the sites, these are the locations of our 5 sites. what's really, really important to us is that to launch this really amazing content, you have to go to the site and visit the site itself. This is not something that people can engage with from afar. So for those of you who haven't used our app, by the way, it's free to download. Search US on Earth, please do. But for those who haven't, here is an example of how it works. This is the internationally significant site at Hallen. This is what it looks like today. And this is what it looks like reimagined through the US Unearthed app. So when you reach the site, you've downloaded your app, you scan the code, and it launches a life-size model of the site and exactly the footprint that it used to be, all based on and informed by our rich archaeological data sets. Once you go inside the model, you can then click on key points in it, which throws up more information. I don't have time to talk about this in any detail at all, but it's really important to know that Gaelic was built into the app and the whole project right from the beginning. We worked closely with our friends in this building, Comhairle, who ensured that all of the content in the app and our exhibition is bilingual throughout. Again, I don't have much time to talk about this, but we collaborated with lots of local community groups and schools. And this is something that we're particularly proud of. This was an animation. No, I probably can't play it. It's an animation that the children at North Uist School made, and it's based on a story about one of our sites. And it was shortlisted for the Film G Award last year. So you can watch that animation, in fact, on one of the podiums. So that's what we did. But what happened? What's the impact? Crucially, what's that impact been in terms of sustainable development of our wider tourism sector? I suspect that's what you would all like to know. Well, the first thing to say is that this project has directly engaged more than 11,000 people already. And that includes people attending the exhibition, one of our pop-up events, and 5,700 people who downloaded the app and went and visited one of these sites. Feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. People praise, in particular, that it leaves no trace in the landscape, that they've learnt new things, that it's immersive, and that it brings archaeology to life. People are seemingly most impressed by the life-sized AR models that they can put themselves in, and that's before they even realise that there's bags of information in there on these click points. I think I then changed my slides a weeny bit, did I? No, I didn't. Okay, we found also that selfies in the roundhouses that people can take with their phone. This has been really, really popular, something we didn't anticipate. And not only is that great for people sharing their experiences, but it's really good for promoting our fantastic archaeology. I'm just going to move on and do this bit first. So likewise, this has been picked up by local, regional and national press. Again, really good for promoting what we all have here in terms of heritage resources. Do back a slide because I changed the order just to make my life more difficult. So what are the wider impacts then for tourism? So our evaluation data indicates that people are now staying at these sites for much, much longer. With the intention of visiting more archaeology sites. So that's what they say. Our app use analytics informs us that the average app use time is 42 minutes, with some rather unique users on the app for 10 hours. But this has really important implications for stop and spend, which I know is a really important strategy for enhancing and maximising the wider visitor economy. App use analytics also demonstrate that the 29 museums, restaurants, gift shops, cafes, etc. that we featured on the app as well, that these received more than 15,000 hits. So we're not only promoting the heritage, but we're promoting the wider infrastructure. And we also can say that 37% of respondents to our survey estimated that they'd spent between £10 and £50 at a local shop, venue or cafe, either before or after their visit. So what does successful impact look like? Well, for us, it's not just about boasting about downloads or the number of people who visit our exhibition. It's also about establishing the Outer Hebrides as a really key destination for archaeological and wider heritage tourism, a place where people can engage in our rich cultural heritage offerings. So we can say other things from our evaluation data. For example, 90% of users of our app said that they'd learned something about our archaeology. 40% said they'd learned something about Gaelic language and culture, and 88% recommended the app and coming and visiting these sites to other people. I have to boast about this because it's too good. The project and its successes were recognised by the Council for British Archaeology, who identified UVAP as 2022 winners in 3 out of 4 categories. So that included archaeological public dissemination and presentation, innovation, and they also voted it as their outstanding project of the year. So all in all, I think it's really fair to say this project has been a huge success, and it really demonstrates that if we embrace these digital heritage techniques and tools, not only can we overcome those challenges, like I pointed out at the beginning, but we can go even further, do something much better, which is create innovative, groundbreaking heritage offerings. And right now, and it will only be for a short time longer, this is the only place that has done this. We're the only place that has location-triggered augmented reality archaeology app in Scotland. That's something to be proud of. What I'm also particularly proud about is this project is really helping to dispel that myth that I'm sure we're all aware of, that places like Orkney have much better archaeological heritage than the Outer Hebrides. This isn't true. It might be the case that we lack that proliferation of upstanding remains, but it's absolutely not the case that we don't have fantastic archaeological resources. What we have is different, it's no less important, no less impressive. And with digital tools like the ones we've demonstrated with UVAP, we've shown that we can create really engaging and really popular heritage experiences. And I think the relevance of that for sustainable development is really clear if we have a look at the amount of income that's generated in Orkney on the back of their archaeology. Okay, so what's next? I argue that UVAP has left us a really exciting legacy for heritage interpretation, one that's trailblazing, it's innovative, and it's beneficial not just for the community, but also for visitors. But really, it was just a pilot. We just wanted to show that this could be done. And now that we're confident that the approach works, we want to expand on this proof of concept. We want to develop similar digital heritage offerings for archaeological sites and wider heritage sites across the Outer Hebrides as a whole. We carried out some engagement events in Barra and in Harris, and there was real interest from local groups, local community groups and local schools for developing very similar AR app for these islands and for these for people's archaeological sites there. So on the back of that interest, we now have funding applications in progress with HIE, with Historic Environment Scotland, and with the National Lottery Heritage Fund. And perhaps you're all aware that we put in a request to the Comhairle for some additional financial support, and also that we would like to continue working with the Comhairle in the successful way that we've done to date. All going well with funders, our plan is that we would start working on Barra and Harris Unearthed in the summer. Currently, we've got a small short-term project we're working on, which is another sort of innovative thing. We're creating a US Unearthed book, which is a sort of celebration of the project we've done so far and information out there about our archaeological sites here, but with a twist, which is that from the book you can launch AR content. So from the page, you'd be able to bring the site to life, zoom into it. Again, I'm not aware of anyone else who's doing that at the moment. Again, this is in partnership with the council, with funding from the Crown Estate and investment from Storus. We've also put together a very initial first stage proposal to develop a 360-degree, fully immersive heritage experience in the extension to this building. In addition, we've also been developing our role as digital heritage experts through FE, HE and research. So we currently, myself and my team and my colleague Emily Gallagher here, we teach on undergraduate and postgraduate courses around digital heritage, and we're developing a digital heritage masters programme, hoping to attract students to come here and learn how to develop their own digital heritage tools. And we hope that that programme will start in August 2025. We've also recently put out an advert, I think it was on Friday, for a fully funded PhD based here studying digital heritage, and that's called Heritage Hearth and Home. I've got that wrong. Hearth, Heritage and Home, and that's again in partnership with Comhairle. So if you know anyone who would like to come and study here, please let us know. So concluding comments. First of all, why digital heritage approaches? Hopefully I've already convinced you of this. Digital heritage tourism is sustainable tourism. That's really important. we can create trailblazing heritage experiences that allow us to grow our visitor economy. But what's really important is we can grow it in a way that's environmentally and economically sustainable. So approaches that are sensitive to our fragile landscapes, but they're also requiring limited infrastructure and maintenance. The technology also provides, and I perhaps could have spoken about this a little bit more, but there is opportunities there for visitor crowd control, for dispersing and better distributing our visitors across the islands. For example, we're aware when we've been working with community groups and estates in Harris that there are concerns about pinch points and parking. So when we work on Barrow and Harris Circuit, it's going to be really important that we do that in a way that only enhances what we have there and doesn't create further problems. But I'm also aware that there are some concerns about things like the deep water terminal in Stornoway and how we're going to deal with all these new visitors. Well, digital tools like our app are really good for making better use of that wider historic environment, getting people into different places and avoiding those pinch point kind of problems. We also need to think a little bit more about getting information to people, given the closure of some of the Visit Scotland visitor centres or the information points. And also we've got temporary closures of some of our kind of key sites. So, for example, Callanish and Kishmore Castle, both temporarily closed. So what can we do digitally to help with that? One thing. Right, and finally, why work with us? Why should the Comhairle continue working in partnership with UHI North West Hebrides? Well, I think we are fast emerging as experts in this field of digital heritage. And by working with us, I think we can all help to establish the Outer Hebrides as leaders in digital heritage interpretation. But secondly, our heritage projects are delivered from here. So that's from the Outer Hebrides, employing and retaining staff in our local economy, and that's got to be important. And also because we're here, we've actually got really shared goals, I think all of us. And that's about showcasing our outstanding heritage to the world and further enhancing the reputation of the Outer Hebrides as a really key destination for sustainable heritage tourism. And my final slide, you'll be pleased to know, it's just a quick moment to thank our partners and our funders and our collaborators for all of the digital heritage projects to date. I've got some copies over there of our evaluation report that we put together for one of our funders, which outlines in a bit more detail exactly what we've done and some of the impacts, and I'd encourage you to have a look and take one away. And finally, just say thanks for having me. Yes.
Thank you, Rebecca, for an excellent presentation. Do members have any questions for Rebecca? And then Councillor McDonald and Councillor McKenzie.
Don't know if that's working or not.
Yeah.
So try that. When Rebecca runs,
Well, thanks so much for a really, really interesting presentation. Seems like a fantastic development and really interesting. Being one of the councillors for Harris, that sounds a great offering for not only tourists but locals. So I'd be incredibly interested in our archaeological history. So yeah, I'd be very supportive of any future development. So thank you very much.
Vice Chairman.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Rebecca, for a great presentation. You really did a job of selling it to everybody here. The results speak for themselves. My question would be, how long before you get the use from the Barra and Harris project, I suppose it's dependent on funding, up and running, and when are you going to educate us Northerners from Lewis? Because this is something that obviously we're crying out for when it comes to the visitor economy in Lewis, in particular, given what you mentioned there, the cruise ship arrivals over the next few summers. But I think most of us here are aware of the importance of archaeological tourism and the vast underutilised resources that we have. You mentioned Orkney being comparator here, and I think if we were to do a better job of what it is we have on our own doorsteps, with North Orkney and Cobtack, close to Cobtack, but I think it's a fantastic development, and I can't wait to see it progress from Barra to Harris, then on to, as Heath is up in Lewis.
Thanks, and thanks also, be really interested in following up your interest, Harris Councillor. We'd really like to start on Barrow and Harris Unearthed, as I said, in August, and all going well. If the funding comes through, then that is our intention. And we'd love to continue moving north and working further in Lewis. There's huge opportunities, and I think particularly to articulate that with other developments in the area. I think perhaps that's conversations that we can continue. You know, like most things, you know, it's funding that would hold us back. But I think we have the expertise, and if there's a will and there's funding in place, then there's no reason why we can't take that forward.
Thank you. Councillor Ian, my colleague.
Last year, thank you very much. That was absolutely fascinating. We had pretty spellbound with all that. Can I ask where you get or how do you achieve most of your advertising? I think you get down to the local, well, I know you get the local sources, you go into schools and everything, but what about you? What's your main way of publicising it?
Well, that's been quite a steep learning curve for us, and I think we can certainly improve on that. We have leaflets, and we've got quite a well-developed social media campaign. So that seems to be reaching a lot of our audiences. I think we need to be doing more. So any advice and thoughts on how we could be doing that would be really well.
Thanks for the Ian McNeil. Back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Like my the council colleagues, we also enjoy your presentation, and as a councillor for Barra, I look forward to being over in Barra and extending it service over there, and well used to Becky's selling of archaeology, and it's amazing what they've all done in recent years in archaeology in US, so we look forward to seeing it develop through the Western Isles. Thank you.
Councillor Paul Stephen Peter.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks very much, Becky, for that presentation. The US councils have been aware of this for a while, and they supported it. I think it's groundbreaking. It's leading the sector across the country. See the arguments probably is. So I think the more we can do to promote and develop this way of attracting tourists and exchanging information with people who are coming to our islands, the better. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in Barra and Harris, and like what he says, Lewis next. I suppose it's the fact that you are doing so well. I think we need to be advertising this kind of situation a lot more. We need to be shaking from the rooftops. Like say, it's one of the awards you won alone were fantastic. So we probably just undersell it in our islands. I think we've got a product and an offering here that we need to be getting out to the wider public. So if there's anything we can do together to kind of boost that, I think it's really worth doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. Councillor Ray McKenzie.
Thank you. Just confirming, I agree with everything that's been said about, fascinating presentation. Thanks for that. Certainly there's a lot there that I didn't understand, but one way of showing things. It's fantastic we are doing that. Going back to the report, I had an advance thing at 6.4, and this isn't to do with the presentation. We've only got a small thing there, but 6.4 says the number of proposed large-scale projects on the outer heads has increased significantly over the last year and will pose significant challenges to the archaeological service in terms of managing that. What's the onus on actually? I'm just wondering, what the onus is on companies that are developing and building this major projects. what's the onus on them reporting so that they don't shut crowd through some important artifact which has been everywhere. All the times. So it's important that these things, I can recall actually when that before that one time when the Garnet village was when the last person left and came before this council and we were asked, what to do with it, 10,000 just to preserve and the house is some sort of possible way of developing in the future. I can recall somebody saying at that meeting, 10,000 grams, that's a waste of money, it's just a pile of stones. If you look at what we've got with the garden now, it's really a fantastic thing. And, steps aren't taken at a really early stage now, it's maybe too late.
Thank you, Sir Council. Colin, your keeper.
Thank you, Chair. On the most large-scale project of that type, there will be an archaeology plan as part of it, most of them as part of the planning conditions, and there's an onus on the developer to report any finds of that type they might come across in their development. Nora Clays and Head of Planning is with us, and I don't know if Laura wants to add to that in any way.
It's very standard with any planning application or such things and consent. It's required for us to consult internally with the Comhairle archaeologist. You will consult whose own knowledge and consult the resources available to provide advice on the likelihood of archaeology remains being present. And then one of mitigation measures that can be in place. We will usually ask in first instance for written field investigation and recovery survey, which will be presented in a report which will be submitted to the Comhairle archaeologist, and that will set out a level of information that will then inform the next stages. Next stages can include a watching brief where an archaeologist is present during any works observing excavations. It can also alternatively require like trial excavations prior to development. Depending on the findings, can sometimes require full excavation and recording. So there are various stages, but as the plan of working forward will place an enormous strain on our civil person archaeology service.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mackenzie. Vice Chairman.
Yeah, thanks for letting me back in again, Chair. I'll go back to what Councillor Mackenzie said about particular spend and how money is considered for future projects. I believe we've got a report going to PNR in a couple of days' time for 45 million to be considered to be spent on our own archaeological services. And if we do nothing else in the next 3 days, and that we remember this particular delivery from Becky, from Emma, wonderful presentation before. I've downloaded the app to be less than 30 seconds. It's fantastic. Just a bit good. There's so much on it. So when we're considering granting money, possibly this week, to the archaeological services, consider the impact this is having on us. I think it's been delivered fantastically well, and if anything's been done to sell it to us, certainly this morning we've learned the value of what can be achieved with decent digital presentations for our physical economy in particular. So recommended to us going forward.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Mustafa.
Thank you, Chair. Let me put my camera on here. And thanks, Becca, for the presentation. That was really interesting and very informative. But I mean, my point probably not directly to the archaeological things, but as that presentation showed gives us an idea of the future growth of these islands. You know, when you look at technology like AI at the moment, and the question to Becca, what are the possibilities, of what can we expect to develop, based on this experience? Is there possibility to extend this up to maybe folklore stories that don't have any archaeological basis, but have, huge cultural significance? I know you talked about developing a book and developing, so is there something, we could take this up to the next stage? And maybe for the education committee as well, I would like to, knowing that the importance of AI and all this technological advances to our sort of growth. What are we doing in terms of in our schools and things, maybe in cooperation with UHI and things to focus on this skills that will be, we all know that those will be the skills in the future that our young people will need to compete with, and maybe like Becca was talking about, a PhD placement to attract people from other areas. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Mr. Stafford. I'm really pleased you raised that. I think what we'd really like to see is there being an opportunity not just for us to develop great digital heritage tourism, but opportunities for our young people. And we'd like to link up with schools. As I said, myself and Emily, we teach at a variety of different levels around digital heritage, and we want to see that expanded. And if we can develop a working relationship with the schools so that we can bring those skills to our young people for them to take forward. And I think undoubtedly this is the future of how not just archaeology, but a lot of heritage-based tourism is going to be presented to audiences, and natural heritage as well. Why not give our young people a chance to be right at the front of that? And through the UFAC project, we did work with local schools, with Limerick, with the school in North Uist. We would have done much more, but 2020 wasn't the best year to start doing community engagement, as we all know. But we'd be really keen to continue those kind of collaborative relationships with schools, precisely for the reasons I think you're outlining, which is these are opportunities for employment.
Thank you, Rebecca. Any other members have any questions? Observations? Very good then. Rebecca, thanks very much for that excellent presentation. I think we were all really pleased by it, and reminded that archaeology is the very heart of the heritage security. We'll just describe it as because it's a walk system, I think. So thank you again for your attendance and for all your work, and we look forward to an update sometime in the future. Thank you. So, do members agree to note the report? Thank you. Item 5 is a service business plan which will registered 2024-25. Report seeks approval of the service business plan and operation which registered 2024-25. Hence, the opportunity have been considered separately in the service business plans and risk register folder on SharePoint. Item E, Deputy Chief Executive Director, and item G, Economic Development Planning, and the business plans and risk register of levels to this committee. The Deputy Chief Executive, Carol Young, will speak to the report and answer any questions.
Thank you, Chairman. The service areas that are covered by these business plans include consumer and environmental services, heritage and culture, housing services, strategic projects, planning, building standards, and economic development. We have a very heavy agenda in front of us, Chair, so I don't propose to go into any additional detail other than to say the various actions and outcomes are shared in the plans in SharePoint. I'm happy to take any questions on any element of the plan.
Any questions from members? If not, insofar as this committee is concerned, you agree with the recommendations 3.1. Thank you. Item 6, business continuity plans. This report is for note and provides an update on the state of business continuity management across the forum. With up-to-date documents and solutions to the business continuity are available in the with 2 members on SharePoint, and again, Colony and McCreevy will answer any questions you may have. Any questions?
Lost in mind.
Sorry. So Mike's not on at all, do you know?
Just a little, yeah, it wasn't on at all.
Just at the end there.
Just at the end, it came back on.
Okay, sorry about that. Colony will answer any questions.
So happy to take any questions.
Questions from members? And again, insofar as the committee's interests are concerned, you agree to note the report? Thank you. Item 7 is Heritage Service Pricing Policy, report by Deputy Inspector. Report seeks approval of the updated Heritage Service Pricing Policy and Image and Media Licensing Policy. And Colin George Morrison will speak to the report.
Thank you, Chair. So members will be aware the Heritage Service Pricing Policy was last submitted to committee for approval in June 2019, so it was high time that we updated these charges. So this policy broadly brings us in line with similarly sized councils as ourselves, such as Orkney and Shetland. Just to draw members' attention to a couple of things. Members will probably be aware we've attempted as a team at the heritage team at the museum, particularly the Museum of Stornoway, to increase income generation. So we've been able to do that over the past year through selling our own stock related to the chessmen and specific exhibitions we've had, for example, Gathering the Light. I'd also like to draw members' attention to the appendix and the entry outside normal public opening hours. We've met with the cruise forum several times, obviously, as we've headed into the high season from the 1st of April. And a topic that's often come up is the fact that the museum is closed on Mondays. Just like to make it clear that we are constantly in touch with excursion companies and the cruise forum. We've made it very clear that we can open on Mondays if we're given notice. And indeed, last summer we did open on several Mondays throughout the high season. So these are the costs associated with groups, not necessarily related to cruise ships, any excursion companies. These are the costs: £208 per half day and £390 per full day. And these costs are just to cover the visitor assistance and the extra costs that we incur for opening that day. There's no profit within that. It's just to break even. So we've made it clear again heading into the high season in 2024 that we are able to open on Mondays when we're given notice. So we're asking members to agree to the updated policy. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Colin George. Councillor McCauley.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Colin. From George. Can I ask if we're going to be open on every Monday for the rest of the season, but there is a cruise ship in? And welcome the fact that you're improving the income by selling chess-related things and to the tourists. What kind of income are we generating? Thank you very much.
George.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to Councillor McCauley for the question. I'll check with Isabel McLaughlin, the Visitor Services Officer, but I know that we have had several bookings already for the high season throughout the summer, so we will be open several Mondays. We won't be open every Monday. I think there's a couple of public holidays in amongst that period, which makes things a little difficult. But we will be open several Mondays. In relation to the stock, there's a variety of stock available. We were selling a lot of that stock through the shop in the castle, but we've found that it's been easier and more beneficial to ourselves to be selling through in the main museum entrance area. The other factor that's made a big difference is the fact that we can now take payments via card. As members will be aware, we can't actually charge visitors to come in, but we have a suggested donation of £5. And just going back to the excursion companies, what we ask them to do is to factor that £5 donation into their ticket price, something that they've certainly welcomed. So we hope to see more excursion companies taking that offer up during this season and indeed future years.
Thank you, and thanks for that update. Is it maybe something we could look at some point, this public holiday closing? I appreciate the council like public holidays, but surely it's not beyond us to have staff either getting double paid or a day off and do. So there's opening when tourists are coming here, it happens just to land on a public holiday.
George, you want to come back from that?
I can't, to be honest, I can't really comment on that. I'll certainly speak to my line manager and see what we can do.
Thank you.
Councillor Murray.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Colin George. A couple of points. I noticed at 5.2 it says that the heritage manager post has responsibility for this, but the post has been vacant. What are the plans to try and fill that post? And the second thing I wondered about was in the appendix, it seems useful to see all the different charges and the recommended charges, but it would be quite good for comparison to see what that was before. So thanks. You can see on either of these.
Thank you. Colin George, you want to come back? Councillor Murray's questions there.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Murray, for the question as well. We can certainly circulate that to members, so that's not a problem. In relation to the Heritage Manager post, it is still on the established list. As with these things, it's just down to budgets, and we are looking at ways to try and fund it. It has been vacant since March 2019, as Councillor Murray mentioned, 5.2. So we are looking at it, and we're trying to find funding to fill that post.
Councillor Murray, do you want to come back now?
Thank you. That's it. I just wonder, is it a post that could possibly be an apprenticeship? Is that a possibility to consider?
George, did you catch that?
I did, Chair. Thank you. Yes, it's possible, and it's funny you mention that, because we have been speaking to Delina Smith about our training programme over the past week, 10 days. We've updated our training programme across the service. So it's certainly something we can look at, not just with this post, but with other areas within our section as well. And I think wider than that, we've been speaking to the Outer Hebrides Heritage Forum, who have also been making attempts to fill certain posts and to support certain historical societies, community across the islands with apprentices. So there's certainly potential there, and thank you for bringing that up, Councillor Murray. We will be looking at that, and we can update members at a further meeting.
Thanks, George. Councillor Angus Murray, Angus Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. My question is in relation to item 2.6 in the body of the report, where we've got current staffing capacity limits the service ability to generate income. I would like to ask maybe Mr. Morrison if he knows how much income we would and how many members of staff we would need to generate on ratio, because there's no figures and we don't know how many staff or what income we're losing.
Morrison.
Yes, so we can bring that to a further report as well to committee, Councillor Morrison. I think what 2.6 refers to is just, obviously, we're limited with the number of visitor assistants we have. We're limited with the amount of stock we can purchase. There's various things we can do to increase income, particularly within the museum service itself. As has been mentioned, and as members will be aware, the increase in visitors to the museum and other areas of cultural interest and interested tourists has increased massively over the last couple of years with the cruise ships coming in. So we can certainly expand it, and we can bring a report back with more detail on that.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Vice Chairman.
Chair, going back to Councillor McCorry, Councillor Murray's bringing up the points about current staffing capacity, limiting the ability to generate income, and we don't have a heritage manager post for developing an income strategy. We're going around in a kind of catch-22 situation here. We've got to get beyond. Sorry, we're supposed to Monday. It's a public holiday when there's a demand. We really need to get beyond that. So we need to start thinking out of the box on this one. I think there's a proposal going again to PRR to support what it is that we're doing with our tourism and our heritage sector as well, and putting additional money in there to help support this. So I think it's incumbent upon us to be a little bit more with it when it comes to dealing with our tourist potential. Like I said, closing on Monday was a public holiday when people wanting to use the facility. We need to get around that. And as for being able to take card payment, I drive a taxi from Scapershound to Strong, and I've been taking a card payment for 15 years, so I'm really grateful that you caught it.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Councillor McSween, I think you've got your hand up.
Yes, Martin, and apologies first of all for not being able to attend down in Uist. I would have loved to have been there, but obviously just a clash with lambing, as the tiredness on my face shows. A question for Colin George, and just looking for clarification on the payment rates. And I suppose I have to declare a slight interest in that. I offer services to the cruise ship excursion groups as well, and my experience is that they're obviously looking to get things as free or as cheap as possible. How are they paying for this? And for example, the half day and the full day rate, if we're looking at a break even, can we factor in a 5% or a 10% profit margin? Is that allowed? So just what's the practical process for them paying for it, and are we able to make a small profit on it?
Mr. Morrison.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Councillor McSween for the question. So the process is very simple. The cruise excursion companies and through the Cruise Forum are aware that they contact Isabel McLaughlin, the Visitor Service Officer. She manages the visitor assistance. That's the key to this to this whole operation in terms of opening on a Monday. In terms of how they pay for it, they pay for it in advance. And I think I mentioned previously, we ask them to factor in the £5 donation into their ticket price. Could that be increased? The simple answer is yes. Whether they'll be willing to, I'm not 100% sure, but it's again certainly something we can look at.
Thank you, Colin George. Councillor Seen. Stepper.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm just thinking, if I'm not on a cruise ship or I'm not in Stornoway, if I'm unfortunate just to land to Watersee or Barra or whatever, how can I access? Is there any digital way of accessing the artifacts and the things in the Eilean Museum? And is there any way that we can look at future way of commercializing that and monetizing that? So I know the conversation at the moment is you need to be in Stornoway to access that. So just a question. Thank you.
George, are you able to come back on that?
Thank you, Chair. I'm noticing Katrina McCush, the Museum Development Officer, is online, and perhaps with your permission, Chair, I'll ask her to come in. But just to say, we do have a new heritage website, which is fully bilingual, and we have had discussions on how we can expand the amount of information that we share on that. And I think as a service, we certainly can do more and expand, how we advertise and promote what we offer. So that's certainly something we've been looking at as well. We've got a new communications and marketing strategy, which was done with John Morrison recently. So there's certainly potential there, and I'll ask Katrina to come in and maybe give you some more detail.
Katrina, are you able to come in?
Thank you, and apologies that I am also not there in person, like Councillor McSween. It's I'm actually on lambing leave at the moment. We have, as Colin George said, a new website for the Heritage Service that covers the museum, the archive and archaeology. Through that website, we've started making some of the collections available, and it had been our aim to make all the collections as accessible as we could through that website by linking the website with our collections management databases, which would mean that there would be photographs of the artifacts along with descriptions. However, due to the cyber attack, that part of the project will now have to be delayed until we have again access to our collections management database, because that's where we hold all the information about the artifacts. And if we can't retrieve that information, then we will have to start to regather the information, which will be quite a long process. And I also have to make the point that although digital is definitely a huge benefit for the future, and that lots of people can access it, there are also benefits to the real life objects and artifacts as well, and it's important to care for them. And there are a lot of people that visit the islands especially to see the artifacts. For example, the chessmen, there's a lot of people that will travel here especially to see the actual chessmen, even though they are available online. And the same with the artifacts that are found that are maybe not as famous as the chessmen as well. And it's important to care for them for future generations, because as we've unfortunately found out, digital assets can be lost. So it's important to keep hold of the tangible artifacts as well.
Thank you, Katrina. Any more questions from members in this item? It's here now.
It's sorry to go back in again. My apologies to Colin George. It's been pointed out to me that Service wasn't allowed to get any card payments up until recently. So my apologies to you for that.
There you go. Recommendations then at 3.1 for unit agreement. Thank you. Item 8 is the museum service update. The motion provides an update on the museum service.
Thank you, Chair. So the decision from the accreditation panel was received.
Sorry, Mr. Morrison.
Oh, sorry.
Continue to accreditation and Colin George speaks.
Sorry, Chair. Couldn't quite hear there. The decision from the accreditation panel was received on the 21st of March, just over a month ago, which means that the accreditation status for both museums will reduced from full accreditation to provisional accreditation for the next 12 months. So members will see that the majority of the actions are a result of the impact of the cyber attack. There's a list of the actions at 5.4 of the report. These are actions which we will need to implement and take action on for the start of next year, and we'll be working closely with CMT and the incident management team. The Museum Development Officer, Katrina McCuish, has also been speaking to them already, and we would look to give members an update at the next series, probably on our progress with that. Really important that we take these actions as quickly as possible to get back to full status. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Morrison. Councillor Francis Murray.
Thank you very much, Chair. Linked to the last report, see that on the workforce at 5.4, recruiting to a heritage manager of the heritage officer posts are also part of this reduction in status. So obviously getting on with that would be very helpful. And I wondered if you were able to maybe detail what effect having this downgrade might have on museums. prevent them charging or prevent them having the same kind of income? Is there any kind of effect like that as a result of the boundary thinking?
Did you pick that up, Mr. Morrison?
Yes, Chair, I think so. Again, I'll probably ask Katrina to come in and give more detail on this, but it certainly could affect our loans, and it certainly could affect our ability to apply for funding, certainly. And I'll ask Katrina to come in and give you a bit more detail on that, Councillor Murray.
Katrina?
Thank you, Chair. So the accreditation, it's a quality standard for all museums across the UK, and it ensures that the museum can manage and care for the collections for longevity. So some of the repercussions could be, as Colin George said, we have had to make the National Museum and the British Museum aware of the situation. At present, they are happy to wait and see until our 12 months reassessment has been completed. They're happy with this because it's not affecting our security or our environmental conditions at present in the galleries. So it's not something that's affecting their loans. But accreditation, it builds confidence in lenders, and we are also, as part of our immigration exhibition for next year, we're approaching other lenders as well. So we're having to discuss that with them to see if they are still willing to lend, even though we have got the reduced accreditation standard. It will also affect our ability to approach some funders. For example, Museum Gallery Scotland, they've got 3 funds that are only accessible to accredited museums. And there are other funders as well, like the Wolfson Foundation, that are only eligible for ones that have got that are fully accredited. And it also will stop us applying for recognised collection status, which was the next step we were moving towards as well, which most other local authority museums in Scotland have gone through the recognised collection process, which again accesses further funding than at a higher level of funding than accredited status does. But at the moment we are unable to do that because we don't have full access to our collections data. And that's probably the point that of the required actions, that's the section that will require the most work in terms of staff time, will be the documentation plan actions, because as I explained earlier, if we are unable to get back the data, there's probably about 30 years of work has gone into creating those databases. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. Challenge. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chair, but yeah, I just think that really highlights the seriousness of the repercussions that could be a result of this, and I think it would really be incumbent on us to progress all actions as quickly as possible and to give them really serious consideration to ensure that this accreditation is made for the next 12 months. Thanks very much for that.
Indeed. Thank you, Councillor Murray. Can I ask Katrina, are there other museums across the country in a similar situation where they have to reduce accreditation?
Sorry, could you repeat the question because I couldn't quite hear it?
I'm sorry. I'm asking, are there other museums that you know of across the country that are in a similar situation where they're having to reduce accreditation status because of other issues?
Because of, there are a number of reasons why you can go to provisional accreditation. So if you're not meeting all the standards, they can reduce it. So it could be if you're going through when the museum was moving from Francis Street to the new build, we had to be reduced then for a period as well, because we were in flux So that's one, or if there's also, if there's museum which the building work is actually happening in the museum, again, they will reduce the accreditation status because that will affect the security and the environmental conditions and also the care of the collection during that period. So sometimes it can be reduced for just like 6 months if that's what the building period is. But there are a number of museums that have also been hit by cyber attacks. I think Leicester City Council has also had an attack as well. So I'm not sure if they're museums. We have been discussing it with other museums as well.
Thank
you.
Councillor Leader, Councillor Steele.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the report. My question is, you mentioned periods where other people have been closed for 6 months. I'm just wondering if I get through the actions piece, is there an option to have the accreditation sooner than the 12 months, or is it just a review in 12 months' time and just acknowledge the difficulties that you're facing with since the cyber attack? You know, it's really difficult for us. But a lot of service across the council, but yours seems particularly hard hit here.
Real challenge. Katina, you want to come back?
Thank you. It's probably unlikely that we'd be able to complete all the actions before the 12-month period is up, just due to the number of actions there are and the other workload that the team has. We're a very small team, and we've got a number of other exhibitions coming up and other projects as well. So, and probably as well, we're needing quite a lot of input from IT and from the collections management software company that we're working with. So we need to also give them time to build or rebuild the collections management systems. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Comhairle McKeever.
Thank you, Chair. I know there is a cyber attack component to elements we're discussing here, but at the end of the day, when you get right down to the key component here, it's a function of budget. This service is one of many services where we've been over many years, slipping costs out and trying to reduce budget as much as we can. So without a doubt, there is a budgetary component to all this. As Colin George mentioned, heritage manager, and these posts are on the establishment, but the reason they're not recruiting is because we haven't got budget. So I think, as we are budget setting, in future years, I think we've got to think carefully about prioritisation, and if we are putting a lot of prioritisation on this type of service, we have to resource that service, because without a doubt, in my mind, this is all a functional budget. Thanks, Chair.
Any other questions? If not, the members agree to the report. Thank you. Then we on to item 9 of planning. Scottish Government consultation, investing in planning, consultation on the social Scotland planning system. This report seeks agreement, but constitutional response is delegated to the Deputy Chief Secretary of Constitution with the Chair and Vice Chair of the committee. And Warwick Ferguson will speak to the report.
Thank you, Chair. This report relates to consultation which by the Scottish Government seeking input on how best to improve resourcing of the planning system across Scotland. It's a very wide-ranging consultation, and it acknowledges that there are no simple answers. Pressures are on those directly involved in delivering planning services, but also the specialist services that planning required to consult for specialist input, for example, towards environmental health, archaeology, and indeed external bodies such as Siar, State Environment Scotland, HFCOD, but also all seen their resources shrink over the last 10 years. The proposals are set under 2 different parts. Part 1 explore opportunities to do things differently or to work smarter, while Part 2 of consultation explores options for levering in additional financial resources. It's a 40-page consultation interspersed with a similar number of questions. The consultation is aiming to respond to current and future challenges, and the government's acknowledged that not all proposals within the document will be feasible, and really what they are looking for in particular is individual measures that people think could be implemented in early course. Consultation will close on the 31st of May. The report seeks delegation to the Deputy Chief Executive in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair to respond to the consultation. Members' views on the consultation would also be welcomed, ideally by the middle of May. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Questions? Thank you. Councillor George Murray.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate forum, but I wonder if we could implement when major planning applications are in safer housing schemes, that part of these, as a part of the consideration for planning, that developers are required to provide a social aspect to the development. For instance, I'm thinking about Mackenzie Park. It's a major development in my own ward, and there are few.
Mike's gone off, George.
I beg your pardon.
Just not hearing it.
Perhaps you don't want to hear me. Can you hear me in the chamber?
Yes, can hear you.
Too many, man.
Should I put mine off?
Can you hear us in Stornoway?
Yep, we can hear you.
I can hear you and Ness as well.
Technical issue before we proceed when you start.
Okay. I'll just carry on. I don't know where I was. Yes, Mackenzie Park. If there should be a requirement, I feel that developers of certainly social housing and major schemes, that there should be some kind of requirement to provide facilities, say play areas, as part of the planning consideration, that they should be giving the children, you know, a lot of these major developments, housing schemes, it's young families. Mackenzie Park, for instance, there's little or no facilities for children. Play park, if you blink, you pass it. It's almost non-existent. And surely we should be requiring developers to provide some sort of facility for people that are going to be occupying these schemes. I don't know if that's the appropriate forum for this, but one question.
It's a really important point to me. I'm not sure it is in terms of what we're discussing.
No.
In terms of this consultation, but it's an important point. I think you need to read in the notes and all that. But in terms of this consultation, we've also had the opportunity to meet with the planning minister, Joe Fitzpatrick, recently, and we raised a lot of the points with the question on the plan. It was currently the challenges that are coming down the road in terms of developments in the Western Isles. So a lot of what is already in this consultation, we have conveyed to the actual planning minister, and we'll do so again in writing as well. Councillor McCormick, you wanting to come in?
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I would like to refer to the section which begins working smarter, if I may. And I'm troubled by these two words. I'm troubled by the word system changes. I'm troubled by the words streamlining, alignment and standardization. And I'm very concerned that this could lead to reduction in the number of planning officers available to the service. That's rather how it read to me when I read the document through, that this was an attempt by mandarins somewhere in Edinburgh to reduce the number of people involved in planning. And this certainly would not be something that I would want to support, and especially in light of the future of our planning service in the immediate years that are ahead of us, where we're going to need more planners rather than less, and a good deal of support with the planning service, I think. So I'm just a little bit concerned at the wording that's used in the report, and I wonder if our staff share my concern.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. We're just saying that we have raised these concerns with the planning minister as well, what you've outlined there. Marek, do you want to come in and respond to Mr. Flores?
Yes, thank you, Councillor McCormick. The consultation document includes, as I say, a wide range of proposals, and the government can expect to see support for all of them. They have, under like smartly, they have like introduced like a new performance improvement champion who's looking at bringing forward a different system of monitoring.
Again, Marek. Is your light on?
Looking at monitoring the performance of planning across Scotland, it's the view is that it would be a supportive process, looking to work with planning authorities in terms of system changes. There have been system changes going on for an awful long time, and regrettably these changes have introduced more complexity and less simplicity to the planning process. There has been an appeal by Heads of Planning Scotland to the government to cease or at least slow down the extent of change, because change takes time and resource. I think it's the reality is that there is still a shortage in planning across Scotland, and that is now affecting some of the larger authorities, and therefore has become an issue that's very much on the doorstep of government.
Thank you, Marek. So the two things attention, that's another issue that we did raise with the minister in terms of being able to training entities, so forth. And again, we reiterated that in connected to the movement. Mr. McCall, did you want to add anything on that?
Chair, I'm very sorry to say, but I really couldn't hear what was said there at all. That's nothing to do with anything that anybody said, but it's a wee bit difficult to catch everything that everybody says.
Was it Marek's contribution you didn't hear? Response to your question?
Yes. Now I'm not asking for her to go through it again, not at all. No. And even some of the things that others are saying, it's just not coming through here absolutely clearly. Sometimes it just varies from person to person. Maybe it's just it's probably down to me as well, I suppose. But I'm not asking for Maurich to go through it all again. No.
You can speak to her. You can have a correspondence with her regarding that.
Sure.
But maybe just speak directly into the mics if we can, so to ensure everyone's hearing. I think the council leader, Mr. Stevens, wants to come in.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just take some of the points that have just been made, but I suppose we're consulting constantly as well as making change constantly. I think the planning department's having to go through an awful lot of work to kind of just stand still and to manage the workload that they've got. And there's going to be an awful lot of work coming their way over the next few while. So although the report says that it acknowledges it's difficult, I think there are simple solutions. It acknowledges that resource is the issue. So I think we need more resource, and a bit of, I suppose, a commitment from government to put some of the resource it has towards training courses and encouraging people to get into the planning profession. And it will be good to get the feedback, but I suppose it's action more than anything else at this stage, because it's upon us. The renewable sector alone is going to require a heck of a lot of work over the next few while. So, like I say, I appreciate those consultations, and I agree with the recommendation that we feed back to it. But I suppose the wider context is there's so many complications and there's so many things coming that are actually taking our workers and the officers away from what they need to be doing. So I don't know how to take that forward with the minister, but I suppose you've already made those representations.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Councillor Francis Murray.
Thank you very much. No. Thank you very much, Chair. Under 6.16, I really imagine sometimes important things get lost in consultations, and as big as 40 pages and 40 questions, but the concept of locally settled planning fees and the idea of discretionary charging that follows that, and giving that ability to local authorities is one we would welcome. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. I'm going to take in Councillor Gordon Murray and then the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. It was just a point that Councillor McCormack made about the sound. It is quite muffled in the chamber here. I think the clearest speaker, in my opinion, was Councillor George Murray. I felt that he was excellent. So I think if you all be like George, I think things would be a lot smoother. Thanks.
I'm not sure how you're going to take that.
I'm not sure we're going to take that. It wasn't relevant.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, for letting me in. Going back to points raised by Councillor Murray, I've come up on numerous occasions. I actually talked about already in the planning system, whereby any green developments had to have an element of social cohesion, employee rights, etc. But going back to the point of the consultation here, we're in a situation just now when we've got an enormity of planning applications, huge planning applications coming before us. We've already stressed this, I think, to the Minister, to Scottish Government, for the future of our renewable sector. There's so much happening. We need to possibly get the renewable sector to help fund our planning department and help us attract planners, but there's a positive of resource. Looking at the questionnaire, Morag, does it look to you like Scottish Government, from the questions we asked in the questionnaire, are looking themselves to take away autonomy from local authorities and have a centralised planning hub? Because looking at some of the questions that we're asking there, it does very much look like they're forming that kind of landscape where a centralised planning hub somewhere is going to be considered a possibility. What are your own impressions?
Well,
Is the as I say, there's a wide-reaching number of proposals here, and I don't expect them all to be supported. And I attended a meeting of Heads of Planning Scotland last week, and there was very little support Scotland-wide for the idea of a hub. They've taken that model from building standards, where building standards hub has been set up for building standards. Building standards and planning are quite different, because building standards is working to the same technical handbook for the whole of Scotland. It's a totally different animal to planning. So there isn't a lot of support for that. And indeed, there is huge question marks over how it can be resourced, because ultimately the government don't have the money, and they would be looking for that to be added to fees. If I can maybe just come back to Councillor Murray's point on locally set planning fees, again, that is something which planning authorities, I think, almost unanimously are opposed to. If we were to set our own local planning fees with a view to full cost recovery, the fees, the fee level that we would need to set for even the smallest development would be totally unsustainable, and it would actually result in a barrier to development. There is always a battle with planning fees on most projects, but in one defence has always been that they are set nationally. They are set by the government. There is a proposal within the document to for these to be increased annually in line with consumer price index. One of the difficulties has been that planning fees have been raised intermittently. So I think there was a raise in 2017. There was then a raise in 2022, and really not keeping pace with inflation. The other view that came through very strongly from the meeting with Heads of Planning Scotland is that most of these proposals will only allow for a standstill situation. It is not, there's very little in here that is actually going to bring in new resources. It is possible to increase discretionary charging, but it means that you then have to give it also an obligation to then ensure that you deliver that work to a particular timescale and standard. And as it stands at the moment, we're struggling to deliver decisions on planning applications that are being paid for in the timescales. And part of that has been a hangover from COVID, which we're just recovering from the cyber attack to Comhairle systems. And development management is highly process driven, just highly dependent on the systems. And as a result, we are having to do every stage of that process manually. So for a good example is legal notifications, where at the press of a button, once we plotted it, the system will generate legal notifications. We're now having to create every one of these letters individually. So there are a number of different pressures on the service.
Thank you, Monica. We appreciate that. Circumstances that we're working under on all staff that know what to do. Are there any other observations or questions from members? If not, sorry, Deputy Leader.
So just a few points based on, the 6.11 still off the treatment there. It's clear that we are in desperate need of getting some method in place, to get management in the system, whether it's through a graduate placement scheme, whatever. The government must recognise the specific special needs of island communities. And it was alluded to earlier on the amount of money that has come into the Scottish government from Scotland licensing wise, which is 30 million. Clearly looking at from 6.23 onwards to 6.25 there in offshore renewables and hydrogen development. There's going to be additional resource implication for the government, and particularly working to time scales. And my recollection is we did put 100,000 aside in county state funding for additional funding to be available for planning, and I would hope that would go through. That was looking at getting special consultancy work in, and I think what we need is long-term stability and making sure that we do have the staff trained up and not for additional work and effort on an existing small workforce that we do that. But I think the Scottish Government have duty bound to provide additional funding out of the money that they have taken.
Thank you, Mr. McGuinness. Any other questions or observations? No, we'll agree on recommendations to 3.1. Item 10, Cairns the Islands deal. Island Centre for Net Zero. This report is promoting and provides members with an update on the first year of the Islands deal on the project. The Island Centre for Net Zero and subject to the developments and activities with a focus on use on the Barra. And John Cowan is the report. John.
Thanks, Chair. The report's about the Island Centre for Net Zero. It's a very important project, an anchor project within the Islands Growth Deal for us. It's a £16.5 million project, and within that there's £5 million of capital allocation to the Outer Hebrides. That's in addition to 4 members of staff in the islands and the Community Action Network across the islands. So it's updating members on where that project is and the various actions going forward. And then the latter part of the report from section 10 onwards talks about SSEN's whole system solution for the Outer Hebrides, which marks a change from what was previously reported to us by SSEN on improving resilience to the island network. They were proposing 2 new cables, as members will recall, from Skye to Uist. Now there's the potential for a link between Harris and North Uist and a circular system. So that's the update towards the end of the report, but happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, John. Okay, so members. Here, it's second or online. Councillor Dan Thornton.
No, no.
Next year, it may not be the time or the item for this. Great to see Island Centre for Net Zero attracting so much funding. However, I remain cynical about the aspirations of net zero urban centre. Seem to be urban-centric policies which have no real bearings on the reality of living in our communities and the high level of fuel poverty. Experience looking at 8.3, 8.4, 8.5, and obviously the high rates of fuel poverty are addressed in 8.2. 8.4 mentions smart meters. I'm sure anyone who lives in any of our rural communities realises that smart meters are not possible to be installed in certainly in most areas of Harris. Indeed, even just trying to get an electricity meter connected in Harris it takes up to 6 to 8 months on that. Interestingly, there was a report published in 2021 by the Scottish Forestry for the Scottish Government, where the findings found burning local logs generate 4 grams of carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour compared to 48 grams kilowatt hour for wind energy and 123 grams kilowatt hour for ground source heat pumps. Just in my own case, I burn wood from my own croft, literally 100 yards away, completely sustainable, but obviously that couldn't be allowed in new home builds. So possibly not. We can discuss this at maybe a different forum, but I'm afraid I remain increasingly cynical about the aspirations of net zero. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. We know your senses. Councillor Leon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Welcome to report. At 10.6 is listed the cable update to Loch Garnet. Do we have a timeline on when these cables are expected to be?
Thanks, Chair. The 2025 for consenting, 2026 for installation is what SSE are telling us. So 2026 installation for these 3 cables.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, Councillor McCormick.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. One of the wonderful things about this report is that it lies within the ambit of young people, and I do include Mr. Cunningham in that description, although maybe he wouldn't. And I attended a conference which was held in UHI. I only attended one session, but almost all of the people in attendance and those giving the lectures and the information were young people. This is an area where young people are coming to the fore. They understand the need for
addressing climate change issues, and thank goodness they understand these issues an awful lot better than I do. And I welcome the fact that so many young people are involved in it, both in our own council and in CES and other organisations. And it seems to be reflected too in the individuals in Orkney and Shetland. We're talking young people who are involved. And I understand the point that Mr. Fulton makes too, but because I don't really understand the issues here that have to be and how they have to be addressed, I had thought of suggesting that this report be accompanied by a leaflet of acronyms. There are so many of them contained in the report. But then I recalled that in my own life and education, I lived in a field of acronyms as well. It's just if you're involved in something, you learn to live with these. There were 2 points I wanted to make. First, well, 3 points maybe. The first is that I welcome the fact that it is young people who are involved in this, and that gives me confidence, and maybe Mr. Fulton, that might give you a little confidence too. The second thing is, I'm quite intrigued by the fact that there is to be a second interconnector from Ardmore to Harris. I mean, that is what we asked for many years ago. Ofgem agreed that it should actually happen, but it didn't happen. And I'm wondering if there's any potential, since they're going to put in a cable anyway, of maximizing its size, making it much more, so that community wind farms in particular in Lewis and Harris might be able to avail themselves of that particular link, if that's a possibility. The second thing I wanted to ask about relates to paragraphs 9.1 and 9.2 and the prospect of a local energy supply company in the Outer Hebrides. The only part of the conference that I attended was the section on fuel poverty, where we were told by the researchers that fuel poverty in the Outer Hebrides stood at 82%, and that is a figure that I have been quoting since as part of the Poverty Action Group work. And more detailed work has been done specifically in the Point and Sandwich area, and the fuel poverty level in Point and Sandwich stands at 88%. And the average amount of money being spent in the Point and Sandwich area on fuel is 24% of net income. These are actually quite disastrous figures, and they are, I am absolutely certain, replicated across the Western Isles. So one of the most important things that we might do in the immediate future is to somehow or other address fuel poverty. And I'm wondering just how far what is referred to in these 2 paragraphs might take us in that direction. The other point I would want to make is that we are developing in the islands sufficient electricity to cover pretty much all of our domestic needs most of the time, but we're not allowed to use it. Is that going to be part of this little group's responsibility to try and find some way in which of convincing the government that the present system is absolutely disgraceful, where here we are in the Western Isles producing sufficient energy for ourselves, and we're paying more for our electricity than they pay in London. It's just completely wrong. And can I just refer to the fact that it doesn't seem to apply to the same extent to commercial situations, because Point and Sandwich Power recently has come to an agreement through an intermediary, of course, because we can't do it directly, that power be sold to Stornoway Port Authority and Harris Tweed Company. that would indicate to me that there might be a possibility of the government coming to some kind of agreement. Maybe this is not something for this report, but for the next report, item number 11. But I wondered, John, if you could make some reference.
Thanks, Councillor McCormack. You raised a number of points there. The first one on possible export through Skye. The reason SSE are providing the second cable across from Ardmore to Harris is really to provide a circuit to Uist and Barra. So there would need to be two cables for resilience. So they have the one cable going to Lochcarnan, the other cable would be to Stockenish and then across the Sound of Harris to North Uist. The problem with exporting through that cable for Lewis would be blockages downstream through Skye and Lochaber, which are well documented. It's likely that system's going to fill up very quickly with demand from Skye down through Lochaber to Fort Augustus. The potential for export for the community would really be through Stornoway. Now, we know that it's rated as a 1.8 gigawatt cable that's coming for Stornoway Bewley. It's likely that SSC will procure an industry standard 2 gigawatt cable, so there might be some headroom. It's been detuned to 1.8 for our purposes, but there may be capacity once demand arises. Also, they can allow some headroom through active management of the system. They can add 10% to the network by actively managing the system. So there might be potential to export through the HVDC rather than through Harris to Skye. On the local energy supply company, we are talking to the developers early stages about acquiring renewable electricity for retail to local market. Our initial vision or ambition was to route local energy directly from turbines to homes in the islands. But we've since discovered that that's simply not possible technically at the moment because there's no battery in the world that can back up an island network of our scale for more than a couple of days of windless conditions. So the discussion now is around Hebrides Energy as a licensed supply company purchasing energy at discount from these developers and then retailing it on to local consumers. And we hope to be able to enable the developers to make an additional cash contribution to Hebrides Energy to further drive down the cost. So that's the way we see that happening, that the local company would purchase electricity locally and then supply it through license to local consumers at a discounted cost. And the third point you raised, Councillor McCormack's related to that. Fiscally, we are unable to connect local generation to local consumption as things stand at the moment without a large storage solution. Things might begin to change. SSE are now talking about a whole system solution, which takes in solar, hydrogen storage, thermal storage. So in coming years, we might have an island system that we can balance from local renewables. But until then, it would very much be a case of purchasing electricity and retailing it at discount through our own local supply company. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, John, for that very detailed response. Any other questions from members from this item? Sorry, Ms. Councillor McLean.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee, but I concur with the two speakers before me, the two councillors before me, what Grant Fulton has said and what Angus McCormack has been saying as well. Can I ask a couple of questions of John this morning? The UK emissions of CO2 is about 1%. We're about 17th, 20th in the world of emissions. We're way, way down. You say in 8.6 there that peatland is consistently recognised as the largest source of emissions. What study has brought that out, John?
That would be data from SEPA and Nature Scott that's come to us through the ICNZ. It's more that peat is a major carbon sink than an emission. Yeah. So the fact that if you excavate it, you release carbon. Yeah.
That's right. It is a sink, exactly. It's only when you excavate it that you release it. Although there is a little releasing going from the sink in it as well. The decarbonisation programme programme then has a bit of an emphasis on peatland. And I'm glad to see what the council has done in the last week or two about the nonsense about peat fires and peat and the way they were trying to dismiss anybody's burning peat. Peat has been part of this island. It's part of the cultural heritage of this island. And people are still wanting to cut peat and to burn it. And really burning it on a small scale that we're doing, it's got nothing. When you look at the skies on a clear blue summer's day and you see about 10 planes going up above you, the emissions from these onto our islands is far greater. Would you not agree than any amount of peat fire that we're producing?
Yeah, I think it should be proportionate, Councillor McLean, and there are efforts being made through the leader and others to address that point. From the renewables perspective, in terms of peat excavation, what we're finding is that the restrictions around peat and demand for peat management arises from very small scale activities.
Yeah.
You know, you can restore peat cuttings and things. Nature, Scott and SEPA don't seem geared up to the scale of what's going to happen in Lewis with these renewable schemes. We're talking of 200,000, 300,000 cubic meters of peat having to come out to enable the substation for SSE, similar amounts for the developers. But at the same time, that development is enabling gigawatts of renewable energy to come into the UK system. So There has to be an offsetting agreement. We can't just be stopped from doing things because we're enabling a huge amount of renewables to be added to the system. Be different if it was a data center that makes no contribution to carbon reduction, but we are enabling a huge offset, and that's the argument we're making.
Yeah, I say, and it's good to see what you're saying about the local energy company taking some of the electricity, the energy from locally, and then selling it on at a discounted price. I think that's one of the aims. And I think Councillor McCormick has always been banging on about this for many years, and I agree with him entirely that why should we have all what Blake in his day would call black satanic mills, but we've got huge white turbines all around us, and yet we're not getting the benefits of them. So I think that is essential, that decarbonisation programme, that free electricity or discounted electricity for the locals is one of the aims of what you're doing. I'm glad to see that you're doing that, Sean.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stapper, will you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you very much. So it's just probably connecting this one with the previous item in planning. I think when we look at the extra headroom that's going to be available through through Stornoway, this obviously will create, or I'm hoping it'll create, new opportunities for projects in the US. So knowing the restrictions at the moment that exist in terms of planning of where to put, wind turbines in US, so how do we marry the two? How do we create, how do we get around this planning restriction to take advantage of the new opportunities that will be created with the extra headroom? Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I'm not sure if the director or Morag would like to comment on the planning side of things, but certainly from the renewables perspective, there's not just wind turbine opportunities. There's hydrogen that could be done and used. Ferry fueling springs to mind. Real opportunities there for other means of production. But in terms of planning restrictions, maybe the director or Morag.
Morag, you want to come in?
Thank you. Wind generators need to come through planning. They'll be under 50 megawatts to come to council directly for determination before over megawatts to go to Scottish Government under that Section 36 consent. The ability to obtain a connection not for exported imports doesn't come into the planning system. We're really looking at the planning impacts of a development. One of the restrictions in the US in relation to large scale wind energy development has been the incompatibility of that with radar. And as many members will be aware, there are is the history of impact of planning applications being subject to objection from the MOD due to conflict with radar. That's not to say that every application would fall into the constraints, but a fair amount of the area will.
Just to add to what Morag has said, Chair, a number of years ago, ourselves, the Comhairle Lands Enterprise Community Energy Scotland and various other bodies commissioned a survey in US to look at what the potential available capacities were. And as Morag said, there are areas of constraints, not just through MOD and related, but natural heritage and built heritage. But we did identify specific areas in east, south US, and particular areas in north, south that were open for wind energy potential. That came to about 75 megawatts in total. That would be just a nominal based on what looked like 3 areas. If that went progress through the planning system, that view would have to be taken, obviously. But I think there are particular spots in particular areas in the US that are open to wind potential. And similarly, that study looked at marine and tidal potential in towns and around Loch Boysdale in particular. And again, my potential was identified there. So I think there are places in US that are going to be very, very challenging for future energy development, but there are areas that have been identified that do offer potential.
Thank you. Mr. Kunis?
Yes, just following on from what Eilean was saying, the next round of Scotland will offer opportunities, on the offshore for southeast of Euston Barra there. And I think when you look at restrictions on that are to the west of the Hebrides, as Morag did allude to with radar and MOD to the west, one has to look at areas that don't have designations at the moment, particularly on the marine side. And I would say that looking to the future for the use Barra, that the next Scotland round the corner should be leading the way and making sure that there should be development offshore that could lead into what the hydrogen hub and storage would look like. And I would say that that would be the future direction of travel for use and balance when we move forward.
Thank you.
Can I?
Can't be replicated.
Can I just come back there just to ask?
Please.
Sorry.
Very briefly, please.
Okay, yeah, just to ask Eilean, I think some of the areas that have been designated in North US, especially, they're difficult to access. Will there be a role in future funding from the COLA to facilitate any small community project by creating access to these areas? Thanks.
I think the Chair would be happy to engage with any community body that's looking to take forward a project. I think we've been supportive of all the other community developers. So where that support would lie, would it be in creating access or other kinds of support? As we know, even a small renewable energy project needs quite a lot of studies done around it, be it birds, flora, fauna, and all the rest that comes with it. So that has normally been the way we've supported community generators coming forward. So I would certainly be encouraging if there was a community group who was looking at a project to get in touch, and we will certainly discuss and see what type of support is appropriate.
Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, 8.2 mentions the Euston Barra Community Energy Forum, so I think there's an opportunity there to take these discussions forward.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. The report is for voting. We're now going to take a break and we'll resume at 11:40. Thank you.